I want to welcome everybody in. Thank you for joining us for our education roundtable. I wanted to start off by saying that at least with the Raleigh Ringers, we have a couple of events throughout the year. Usually in March, we have our Young Ringers Festival where we have elementary through high school age students. We bring in a clinician and we work with them for the day. We also have reading rings throughout the year, a couple of workshops here and there, and probably our more well known is the Capital Area Handbell Festival that's done in November. Um, you know, People can do different things with these workshops. For us, with the festivals at least, we like to give a little concert. There's a break. The ringers worked so hard with the clinician. It's a good little lunch break for us to give them a concert here and there. So we wanted to open this up for people to share what they have in their unique experiences in teaching others to ring or some helpful hints and skills here and there. So I'd like to introduce you to both Nick Hansen and Brenda Austin, who I know have been very uh, active in the handball community and in education. Nick, if you'd like to start with what you know and what you share with others.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nick Hansen here. Been ringing for quite a long time, going on, I think, about 30 years now, but probably most involved for this chat this evening is I've been an educator doing nothing but handbells at a school outside of Washington, D.C. for 15 years now. So it's a great job, love what I do, and it's a building program, pyramid program, so fifth grade up through high school. Unfortunately, no fifth grade this year because we're not physically at school yet, but I'm sure there may be questions about how we do that tonight. So very glad to be here tonight. Good to see everyone.
Appreciate that. So, what do you normally do, Nick, for um, in a normal world? And I guess we can also go back to what you're doing now uh, to encourage your ringers and the technique that they need to learn.
How do I encourage them with their technique? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Um, well, what's really quite amazing is that, especially with youth, as many of us I'm sure have had the experience, is that there's something kind of magical about bells and kids. And so for fifth graders, sixth graders, whatever year, or actually if when things are normal, I guess going back to that word, the first time that the students at our school actually get a bell in their hands is fourth grade because they kind of do a petting zoo, a hands-on experience. So they'll come around, they'll try some band instruments, they'll try some string instruments, and they'll try bells. And we all know that bells are tuned, so they're successful just within those first 5 seconds of putting the glove on, picking the bell up, and there it is. And just I think that moment of success, it sparks the interest and it really makes them want to do it. So then we finally get them in the classroom. It's all about how do we then best make that technique work. And I'm all about learning properly from the starts, like the wrist isn't snapping. We're not trying to do that to create bad habits right away. And to tie it in actually to what's happening this year, for most of our kids, like this is a handbell right now, just this nice little flashlight. And it's great because through Zoom and through video and through the way I can just see everyone, I can really see how they're doing their technique just by a handbell or a flashlight and the motion that they're doing. And it's wonderful to work with that. And I may actually incorporate this when we're all back to normal because they're not going to have bells at home. But I can then take a moment to really look at how their technique is, and I kind of freeze frame it and see, okay, so right here is where the bell ring, and notice that your wrist is not, it's cocked out like this way to make it happen. So I want to kind of take a moment to say it's like, in a way, like a silver lining with COVID and everything else right now is that you can really look at ways we've had to adapt, and I'm eager to take those same ideas and bring them back to the classroom when we're back to normal.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh,
And Brenda, we'll go to you. And I know you were explaining to me earlier about the marshmallow trick with kids.
Well, I mean, it's totally a Stevie Berryman, but it's like the best technique ever for teaching kids. And she teaches it in her class, so I can take no credit for it. It's totally Stevie's. But we often talk about don't tipping your ice cream cones, you know, the thing where the kids, you know, everybody always dumps the bell forward. Well, if you literally give them ice cream cones and fill them up with marshmallows, and you tell them, you know, if you tip your ice cream cone, you're going to dump marshmallows on the floor, but you can bring them back and eat one. And they just, I mean, they don't, once you do that once at the beginning of the year, and they've got it for life. And then sometimes even when I'm working with adults, I just tell them about how I did it with the kids that day, and that visual is good enough. So that's my favorite little technique for teaching handbells. Like literally buy them little sugar cones and fill them up with marshmallows. Bribery always works.
Especially when it comes in the form of sugar. So
Uh-huh.
I like both of the. I mean, you know, we got so many ideas going around, and I just wanted to see how everybody else, what everybody else has been doing around. Yes, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ideas about our discussion tonight was also maybe coming up with, I know, and this is sort of self-serving for us too, because we're asked to do, as Cam said, you know, workshops both when we're on the road, and we try to do them a couple times a year at our building, where we teach, you know, individual hour-long classes. And some of you have been involved in guild and denominational festivals where you know, handbell classes are taught. And we always struggle with, you know, what are some new ideas for classes? Because we have the same, you know, and they're always needed, the bass bell techniques, treble bell techniques, you know, sight reading classes. We do some change ringing classes sometimes. You know, different roundtables, directors roundtable, and other discussion oriented classes. We added one a few years ago called Stuck in the Middle, so more for the battery. So it has a lot to do with the rhythmic things involved in the middle bells. Yeah, the one we almost always teach is techniques from A to Z. So if you're really starting from the beginning and you want to go through every single technique, how it looks on the score, as well as demonstrating how to pull off those techniques, is another one. But you know, it's straying outside of that. You know, those who have been involved in helping to organize festivals or guild events, I'm interested in hearing from people on other classes that you have had in handbells that you've come out of and go, boy, that was really good, and you've told other people to go to that class because it was so good. So that's kind of one of the focus items I think we wanted to get out of tonight is, you know, classes you've been to at handbell events that you think are really cool, or ideas that haven't been used yet that you think are really cool. So looks like Sharon has her hand up.
Yeah, I confess I came up with this idea, but what we did, I've done it live, and we also did it at handbell encounters of the area 12 kind, was we called it basic, better, best. And what I did was, and Nick, you'll recognize this, I had cathedral bells ring one piece three different times, one imitating I'll call it a rookie church choir, and then better, and then best. And we use that. So in the live class, basically we bring them in, we introduce them to the music so they see what the music is, and then we show them, and I actually videoed them the first time they were ringing it. And then we show them the basic class and say, what are they doing wrong? You know, because it does two things. One, it's much easier to recognize what somebody else is doing wrong than yourself. But once you figure out what it looks like and what's wrong, then we have a little check sheet that says, what do I do well and what do I need to work on? You know, I need to work on my ringing stroke and things like that. And we progress along between, you know, from a rookie church bell choir to better to best, and what that looks like, what it sounds like, and things like that. And I had very good feedback on that class. You know, so it's not, this is how you ring a bell. You know, we just take them in there and get them going. Plus, it also teaches them what to look at when they're reviewing a video. So.
Yes, Brenda.
I think a lot of my classes have come out of, I taught my people something because, you know, what we were doing wasn't working. So then I tried something new and that worked. And with my kids' choirs, I get them in third grade and they don't have music in the public school until third grade. So these kids don't have steady beat. They don't have a quarter note. They don't know what a quarter note is. So and I do, and I like to do classes with adults on this too, but with like body rhythm kind of things. So there's no bells involved. And as silly as it sounds, patty cake, if you teach them different patty cake games, kids don't do those today. And so therefore it's really hard, anything that like crosses that middle line. So if you ask them to switch hands with their bells or weave, it's really hard for them to do because they just don't have that coordination. So if you start teaching them some patty cake games where you have to do specific things on specific beats, it just helps build that skill. And adults find it to be a riot when you do those types of classes and you do some, you know, body percussion kind of stuff. It's fun, but I think it's very valuable.
That's really cool. You know, things that if people are kinesthetic learners, I believe that you know, some of the area events that I've been to, we have like a dancing class or something. If somebody's a kinesthetic learner, I think that's very beneficial for them. Is there anybody else who has like a, yeah, Shirley?
So one of the things that I do, I actually start kids in the first grade. And one of the things that I find with a variety of the kids is they really need help with eye-hand coordination. And so I use tennis balls and the bouncing of tennis balls, not only by themselves, but with others, because, you know, it's a team sport. Therefore, how you learn to control the bounce of the ball, using both dominant and non-dominant hands. And so I have them work individually for a while, and then I will have them work with one another to bounce one ball between two people, and then we progress to each bouncing a ball to the other person at the same time. So again, it's all about eye-hand coordination and rhythm, in that the ball needs to bounce at the same time with everybody. So I'll do a 1, 2, 3, 4 beat, where you have the ball on 1, you bounce it on 2, you catch it on 3, you bounce it on 4, and everybody needs to stay the same. I'll also do a session of that where the kids and I are in a circle, and yes, you can do this with adults because they think it's wonderful as well. They get irritated because they don't get to play with the tennis balls as much as the kids do. But also just have the kids in a circle and using the tennis balls of everybody's bouncing it together. And of course we have to stop if we're not together, because the key is you get to do that together. And then I will do an accelerando. And what you find is kind of the idea is that, you know, when you've got longer notes, you can do bigger strokes and you can take more time. And when we're going really fast, you need to be closer to the floor in order to grab that ball quickly. And I actually will sometimes, especially with some of them, they'll go and then try to start dribbling, like dribbling a basketball, but they'll try to dribble it with and I actually, that you're out for that because what I really want them to do is to continue to grab the ball as we go faster. And of course, I never want to start that out early in the class because then I've lost them. So it's always one of those rewards, you know, that we will do towards the end of a session with my kids.
Yes, Nick. Thank you, Shirley.
I've seen one other ball activity that I think works well with it. I'm sure, and this one is, I've seen it done with tennis balls and also like small, like maybe like hacky sack type balls, not maybe a little smaller, but everyone's in a circle and it becomes a passing game where you grab the ball and then you need to place it in the person to your right or left hand on the beat. And then the best part is then you start feeding more balls into the circle until eventually, if it all works well, everyone's doing the exact same motion. And just like was being said, Shirley, about the like accelerando, I do it with music all the time when I do this with kids. So there's just a great beat, a song they know, they can really feel that beat and connect to it. But it's such a perfect moment when you have the group doing the exact same motion in a circle, and it's like this machine that is just working with itself, and it's a gorgeous sight to see. It's a lot of fun with that too.
I totally agree. What then can be even a challenge is then you reverse it. So they'll get used to doing it in one way, and then that's great. And now you reverse it. It takes a while for them to um, to change. But again, it's all the same thing. You feel the beat together.
Thank you both. Linda.
So for probably a decade, I taught the tennis ball classes at some of our festivals. And whatever you can do with children, you should try to do with adults. A beginner is a beginner. It doesn't matter what the age. The tennis ball thing, I've done exactly what you're describing. There are a lot of different variables on that. Sometimes we would pick up the ball and then clap and then do the same. So we would also integrate other movements, either clapping or vocals or some other kind of movement with that, or going faster or slower, like you said, like in a accelerando, louder and softer. There's so many different possibilities. Along with that, any kind of Dalcroze movement. And if you know anyone, if you're trying to get some movement or try to do something different, what happens is with any kind of Dalcroze movement, you're going to find that you can pinpoint right away who is challenged rhythmically. My percussionist and I did a series of classes last summer. I think we did 6 in a row for all of our ringers incoming, beginning ringers as well as advanced. And it was phenomenally interesting to see how they would walk on the beat, clap the eighth notes, walk the eighth notes, clap the beat, 16ths, whatever, triplets and all of that. We did that whole mixture of internalizing the beat, and it was incredible. Movement is really important because obviously with handbells in your hand, you're the one who has to feel the beat. And a lot of ringers are not solid with that. And it really helped, I think, a lot of our ringers, at least they said so. And we saw a difference a little bit later on when we got into some rehearsals.
Wanting to ask this question, thank you, Linda. I was wondering if anybody has been to like a festival or national seminar and seen a class that they thought was really unique or awesome. Just like, I wonder if I can incorporate this somehow.
One of my favorite classes, Greg Ashurst taught a few years ago at National Seminar. I think he called it Learning Through Fructose Corn Syrup or something, but where he took all the rhythms and made them into candies. Like Skittles was a 16th note, dotted eighth, dotted quarter, or dotted eighth, 16th dotted quarter, and all of these different candies. And I changed it a little bit for my world. I turned them into fruit. But, for people that were learning, all of a sudden they can read those. If you go, well, that's huckleberry, it's not one-yenda, that it just made sense for them. Because if you had to do huckleberry, you figured out if you're the huckleberry or whatever, you can figure out what you're on. So that was one of my favorite classes I've taken at National Seminar.
I've never even thought about using candy as an example of keeping tempo or time.
Well, it's because words have an innate rhythm. So,
Right.
So whether you're doing triplets or 16th or an dotted eighth, 16th or 16th note dotted eighth, so if you have the da as I think it was Skittles, but I can't remember what all his were, but that for people who don't read music, that put it into terms that they understood, and it was a little less intimidating. than just one E and one, two, three.
Anybody involved in, I know Linda mentioned, and she's been on the Area 3 board and so forth, involved in organizing classes for guild events. I'm going to put her on the spot, but because she's relatively new at it, I think. But Sarah in our group has recently taken over the role, Sarah Sheffield, of what is it? Event coordinator? Is that your role, Sarah?
Yes, I'm coordinator of events.
So do you help decide on what classes are taught at the different Area 3 festivals, or is that somebody else that does that?
No, yeah, the program chairs do that.
Have you seen in your brief time doing that role, seen any really unique classes pop up, or do you guys tend to?
I have not had an event yet.
Okay.
Because of the pandemic.
Okay.
Yes, Laura.
Mute.
What was that, Laura? I can't hear you at all. It's like, it doesn't say you're muted, but you're definitely muted.
Oh, okay. I think I know what the problem is. Hang on.
Is this better? No. Okay. And back to the microphone we go. Is that okay?
Yes, that's good.
This.
Yes.
Is that okay? Yes. Okay. So I think it was an area event because it was Larry Henning had a really, really fun class for, actually it might have been the youth festival. And it was a percussion class, but he was using trash cans and like the plastic bins, things like, the big plastic, like the larger trash cans of lower sound. So the kids had mallets and they had all these different containers, none of which were actual drums. And he had all these different rhythms, that you could play separately or together. And so he had them all practicing these different rhythms, and then he would have them, eventually they were all playing them together. And the kids just had a wonderful time. So, no drums needed. And it was fun because the different containers that he found had all these different pitches. So it was a fun thing.
That reminds me, it was another Greg Asher's class 2 years ago. No, it was in Grand Rapids, and he did bucket drumming, and it was the same kind of a thing. Only he had it worked out with pop songs. So like we did bucket drumming to Uptown Funk, and we did different things. And I bought buckets and do it with my kids to have even just rhythmic clapping back and doing different things with the different parts of the drums, and then playing it along with music. Again, just establishing that steady beat and coordination and left, right, and all that stuff.
Thank you. And I like this path we've taken about some of the things that we've seen throughout our seminar days and things of that nature. Does anybody else have, especially when you go with area events, does anybody have any idea of what they'd like to implement for their group based off what they've seen? Yes, Linda.
Just going to say, as a former area chair, we become very aware of the lack of education for directors. And when you have directors who are leading, blind directors who are leading the blind, with that kind of situation, we're not really going to improve our art form very much. We're going to be very limited. To me, as a director now, I really work on having a communication and good relationship with local directors to see what I can do to help them. And I think that's a responsibility a lot of us have. I look at it across the board, a lot of you I know because we're leaders in different ways. And I think we have that responsibility. We have that responsibility to our art form, is to try to help these directors. And lots of times they don't know what they don't know. And yet,
I'm
and
sorry.
they're leading other ringers in that direction. Go ahead.
I've wanted at the area level for us to be teaching a conducting class because I think we need it, because so many of those people, they became the director because the director left and you took piano lessons. So now you're the director, but they know nothing about conducting. And I wish we did more of that kind of a thing at a local level.
Can I say
Yes,
something
Susie?
about that?
Sure, absolutely.
I think that's huge. I think that's like probably our biggest problem is we have conductors that know how to conduct, but they don't know anything about bells. And so they come in, I'm talking about church situations especially, where they're hired because they're organists and they take on the bell role and they don't understand what bells can actually sound like. And I think so even more than a conducting class, to be able to teach them how bells can be musical and how they can be just as beautiful as an organ or the choir or whatever, that it's not just, it's not secondary. I would highly recommend more help, more support for conductors.
We need a lot more director education. And again, I'm going to go back to many of them don't realize they need it, but after decades of working with directors, I can tell you that most of them don't even know how to do, or many of them don't even know how to do correct techniques. And they're teaching ringers how to do them incorrectly and not safe too. I just think we have a really large problem out there when it comes to a lack of director education.
So as the certification coordinator for the Guild, I will just put in a small plug for the fact that that's why those classes were developed. The certification program is in fact for, you know, the person who's hired into the church because they're an organist and they may have had one conducting class during their college career, as I did when I graduated from college. And, you know, maybe limited exposure to bells, et cetera, et cetera. And so the whole idea behind that program is to help fill in the gaps in the education, but we're trying to figure out how to get it more to the area level so it's more accessible, because just having it at a national seminar is, you know, it's a very expensive trip. And it involves, you know, multiple levels of classes. And then we're also trying to figure out how to start to do some of this virtually. So the one that I'm kind of stuck on is conducting. So Linda, maybe I'll reach out to you for some thoughts.
Well, and you kind of hit on it, Laura, because a lot of it's got to do with it being accessible. Let's face it, most directors, I'm going to do that. Most directors are doing this as a freebie. They're a volunteer for their church. Let's go look at the profile. Who are they? The profile is the average person is probably not getting paid. They probably have no or very limited music background, certainly probably no training or very minimal training. And so to go to a seminar would be like taking a fish out of water. They probably would not feel comfortable with that. It's more of a, you know, bringing the mountain to them. You know, what can we do to take it to them? You know, when I was area chair and I did the directoring workshops and I took it, I just traveled and went to different communities and did that. And that went well, but it was just a beginning. There's just so much to do. Yeah. I remember one time I got off the phone with a director who had told me, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. And she went on and on and on and told me all of her accomplishments. And before we hung up, she said, I just have one question for you. What does RT mean? Yeah, a lot of those.
Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know. I'll shut up.
So many years ago, Westminster, I don't think they did, you know, used to have like a several day, Bob Ivy and Don taught, you know, a several day intense handbell. Does that happen anymore? I didn't think so. Yeah. Because I know a lot of people went through that and said that grounded them in a lot of the basics and they could take off from there. But I don't know if we have that kind of opportunity.
Yeah, and if you remember, Dave, we also used to have area festivals that lasted, you know, 2-3 days.
Yeah.
And Don Alured did a few of those for us. Bill Payne, Bob Ivy, you know, there's a lot of different big names that did those elongated. And then you had time to kind of like think that through. Area 2 was still doing the longer festivals.
Yeah.
We got out of the business of that. I think a lot of it was probably driven by cost of location. You have to go to a college campus. College campuses get more camps on, you know, that kind of thing in the regular world or usual thing.
I mean, the longer events allow you to do tracks.
Yes.
Where you can grow, you know, session after session. When we have the 2-day events or the day and a half event, you can't really do that. Or you come in early. Sometimes we've done that at events where you come in early and start a focused event on, you know, with directors or advanced ringers for a bronze conference choir or that kind of thing. But you really need to not just have an hour class. You need to, you know, and I guess we do that with master class, with, you know, conducting with Bill Payne at the national level, and composing. We have folks that have done, you know, those. Seems like Sandra does it now for the composing. Arnold did it in the past. Where you actually, you know, get pretty deep in a subject. I think that's part of the problem these days. I think the longer festivals went away in Area 3 because people didn't want to commit to more than just a Friday night and Saturday. So nobody was coming.
Well, a lot of it's cost driven too. I mean, let's,
yeah,
you know, commitments and cost driven too.
Yeah, Bill and Carolyn Mathis do a director's boot camp. That's, you know, it's been held at the same time as the masterclass series, so it's about that length, about 3 days or so.
Okay.
And they just go through all kinds of things that you would need, you know, as a beginning director, give you all like a, you know, kind of fill your toolbox with all these things. But again, it's at a, like, you know, next year it's going to be in Phoenix. So depending on where you are in the country, that's a long way to go. And, you know, and then the expense of having a 3-day class. So yeah, the conductor's masterclass, which I've done many, many times, is absolutely wonderful, but it is definitely, you know, a financial commitment to go. And Brenda, you did that class. You were awesome as always, but
more people need to go to that and go as ringer observers, because it's amazing what you can still pick up from that side without having the pressure of being one of the conductors. But
true.
The other thing, years ago, in addition to the Westminster thing that Bob and Don used to do, Bob used to do one at Queens College. He did a couple of day thing, you know, used one of the classrooms on the campus at Queens College, used the community college, you know, one of the little community colleges. So, you know, because the master class at National Seminar, that's limited. I mean, there's, you know, 13 conductors and then no more than 25 ringer observers. So, you know, and everybody's got to travel to Phoenix, where, you know, if we could find some places and do some, you know, Dave's local in Raleigh, you're local in the Charlotte area. Find folks that are local and do a 2 or 3 day thing that people don't have to go as far. That, you know, a couple hour drive, and, you know, they may still need a hotel because they're gonna, you know, unless they're gonna drive back and forth every day. But, you know,
that's actually been a really good benefit to Virginia Bronze up here in the DC area, because we started doing just a 1-day workshop. We started about 3 years ago, and just within that day, when we, you know, promoting it, marketing it, how quickly you find people through your marketing that have been like eagerly looking for something to learn. And this is directors and ringers alike. And very quickly within that first couple of years, just doing that 1-day workshop with about 4 class sessions, we had great turnout, great time. And it's like, I'm not involved with Virginia Bronze on any board or anything. I'm just a member, but it's like kind of a thought I have is like, I want Virginia Bronze to be a resource for anyone who plays bells in DC and Virginia and Maryland. Like, and I know there's others out there, so I know we can't be the only one, and that's fine. And it shouldn't be. But if there's someone up here in Fairfax County or outside of DC has a bells question, Virginia Bronze, hey, what's this? How can I do this? And we can be there for them, and it works for everyone. And I think a lot of us within our own pockets around the country could do so many similar type of ways to approach it.
Sharon, yes, sorry, I'm seeing your hand.
Again, Area 12 delved into director type classes via virtual, both in Handbell Encounters. Kendra Simons did a class to help, call it the choral people and things like that, translate, into handbells of what you needed to consider. And then Barb Walsh and Tess Houston, we just, not this weekend, but the previous weekend, did a 5-hour virtual class. And it was very good from the standpoint of, even though a lot of the people that signed up for it didn't think they needed it, she took us back to directing 101, and it was score study. What's unique about handbells when it comes to score study and that kind of stuff. And it was a very, very good class. And they actually are going to do another virtual class in first quarter of 2021. But anybody that's a member of HMA can get access to the class that Kendra did for Handbell Encounters and see what was in that one. You just have to email registrar.area12@handbellmusicians.org, and I'm the registrar, so I'll send you the link.
It's good to have that resource. We definitely appreciate that, Sharon. Does anybody else have?
One of the things that I find that we sometimes seems like we don't do enough of, and we're very sensitive to, is, and we do it some in the denominational festivals, but adjudication, whether that is just giving feedback or whether that is scoring. We're very happy at our handbell events if we get 2 or 3 people that do a solo piece, right? People don't do that as much as they used to, but I always feel like, there's some of us that have been involved in handbells can give, really good feedback to groups that are just starting and sharing, at handbell events, a piece or a little mini concert or something that we can, give both positive and constructive criticism. But we kind of stay away from that. And we don't do that at guild events. Like I said, I've been to a couple denominational events where they've done that. Again, in a constructive way, not making sure it's not too negative, but at least because, as was mentioned earlier, I think by Sharon, sometimes, we don't see this stuff ourselves. So having other people give us that kind of feedback is helpful, but we don't do enough of that. I don't know how we can change that or how we can incorporate that, but it seems like it would be helpful.
Just brainstorming here, that would almost, because it was one of the comments that came out of Basic Better Best, was, because we were concentrating on the ringers, was to do a similar kind of concept for conductors. Cathedral Bells was very generous, and I had to put disclaimers on the side that said, this is not how they normally ring, that kind of stuff. But to have a conductor direct, I wanted to call the class Good, Bad, and Ugly, but I couldn't. But have a director direct the same piece, three different ways, and then have it be critiqued, because then you can know, oh, okay, I do that bad thing, I need to get to the best thing. Would be something that would be relatively easy to do and not threatening to the person directing, because that's the biggest fear of folks. As Barb Walsh said in our workshop, conducting is very personal, and so any feedback that is given is taken very personally, and so you got to be very careful of that.
I have something to say.
Sure, Susan.
If I was thinking out loud, but if maybe there could be a class where you learn to judge and you learn to be judged, you practice being judged. You know, maybe if that's what you sign up for, that would be, I would go to one of those classes. I'd want to know, what am I doing? What can I do better? What do I not know yet? What do I think I know? You know, I would sign up for that class, the good, bad, the ugly, better, best, whatever it's called. But knowing that I'm going to be judged, sign up for that.
I think that with today's world of it's so easy to make a video that we you know, I've started taping my groups regularly or videoing myself when I'm conducting, and I do send it to other people and get feedback, and I send it to my group, and then we can watch it together, and I can say, so do you see how your ringing does not match the person next to you? And they actually can see it. But that's, I mean, it's so easy to make. You can buy a tripod for $10 and put your phone on it, and you can videotape your group or yourself. And Laura, I think you could, I mean, I've sent several things to different people whom I admire, and they've sent me great feedback, and sometimes they will videotape something for me to see. I think there's a lot of potential for virtual class with conducting. It would just be kind of one-on-one, so it'd be pretty labor intensive for the teacher, but.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping on that too, from educator of kids standpoint, my kids would thrive in being in an adjudicated setup for bells, which exists for band and for chorus and orchestra. And I know it does exist in some realms in bells too, but I've yet to experience it in that capacity. So I'm not quite sure how that works, because my understanding is if it's through, you know, one of the things that like a Busch Gardens or something, one of those type of events, that if they have a specific handle judging possibility, if I see the judges' names, I likely won't recognize any of their names, but they could have background. That's very possible. And maybe they have also just very great percussion background and can provide some feedback there. But part of me feels that it's a bit of a trap in that if we go to be adjudicated at one of these events and it's a judge who does not know the instrument, there's gonna be like, wow, that's a great shiny toy that sounds awesome. That's a 1. And that's not going to give the feedback my kids want. They're like, yeah, we're the best. And yes, you are. However, let's learn from this experience. So the closest they can get to that is we do a spring festival with other private schools in this area. And it gives them the opportunity to hear what the other schools are doing and kids their age. And of course, as kids are, they're going to make it into a competition, and they do. And my kids always say they win, and I don't want to break their hearts and say, well, you may have had the fun piece that was awesome, but you know, this group really had the most technically musically accurate song. But we can take some of those moments and of course look back and take feedback on it. So it's a bit of chicken and the egg, because we need people out there who can provide accurate and correct feedback. But how do we get those people out there without training them first? It's a very difficult loop, and it's the hope that those who are youth ringers now, that they will grow into musicians, whether it's handbell or otherwise, and they can take some of that charge. But it's a long way to get there. And to be perfectly honest and frank, I'm a little scared.
I'm sure, Nick, that you see a way to cultivate that talent. But I mean, like, do you have any idea? Like I said, it's a long way to get there. But in what you do with your kids, do you have any idea in any way to make sure that it is fostered in the way that it needs to be to get to that point?
That's a deep question, because I see that in kind of 2 ways. Like, one, being a music teacher, we all know that there's this, we want them to enjoy it and learn from it, have a wonderful time in that growth and become great musicians. Then as a handbell music teacher, there's more to it than that, especially here in the United States, quite frankly, because we look at groups from other countries and other parts of the world where especially handbell ensembles are in so many schools and educational settings. It's from my perspective, it seems like it's taken more seriously in many cultures and territories outside of the U.S. That's, again, from my perspective. But then looking at it for what we can do, every year I try to tell the students and try to build up the fact that, like, you're the future here. This is what you're doing. And taking it outside of our school walls, whether it's just going to do a performance somewhere, but then also promoting youth events. So I try to get my kids to audition for an event that's in Stafford County, Virginia every spring. And I try to request and encourage them to do Distinctly Teen, wherever that might be. And we get one or two every year, which is awesome. At least the last couple of years has been a few more, which is great. So I'm finally getting them out of just our Potomac school walls to experience Bells beyond, because there's so much more out there. I'm really looking forward to the International Symposium in 2022, because I know there's an international Distinctly Teen component, and my plan is to bring as many kids as I can to that. So exposure and training and just experience is as much as I'm pushing my students to do. See what's available, see what's out there.
I have a question.
Yes.
When it comes to children and you're trying to like recruit them into your programs, and when church numbers are dwindling and that sort of thing, maybe this sense of competition or this sense of working towards a goal beyond just what we're going to do at Christmas time would be able to help compete with the soccer teams and the baseball teams and, all these other things that are vying for our kids' attention. Not everybody's going to be a baseball player or soccer player, but they don't, at least where we are, we don't have a lot of other opportunities for them. So do you guys have any suggestions for recruiting more children? I'm especially interested in this first grade situation you have going on. Do you do it with chimes or handbells, or can you talk more about that?
I actually do it with bells. I have chimes, so sometimes we'll do chimes, but for the most part, it's a matter of teaching them respect for the instrument, and they know what's expected, and so, but it can be a great, I do it ecumenically, so you don't have to belong to the church in order to be able to play. And we're fortunate in that there's both an after-school program and a preschool that happen to be co-located with us. And so it's not uncommon that I will get kids from those arenas.
I was just remembering that our church has a homeschool group that comes and does, I don't know, art projects or whatever they do in the basement. But that's another thing that I might consider reaching out to.
Mm-hmm.
This has been awesome. I really like the path that we took with this, especially when it comes to talking about how we get this instrument more well known and how we educate others, be they kids or directors. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add? I wanted to thank Nick and Brenda for being our guests for today. It was awesome of you guys to agree to do this. Well, if that's all we have, then I look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks. We'll be having this on October the, what is that? The 9th, I believe. And Angie, that's October the 5th, sorry. And Angie, would you like to talk a little bit about what we've got coming up?
Cam, I also think that Brenda maybe had a comment. Did you have something you were going to say, Brenda?
No, I was just saying it was the 5th. I knew it was the 5th.
Yes.
Because I'm a church musician, so I know my Sundays, so I knew he meant the 5th.
Okay, well, we'll see you guys. We'll see you all on the 5th. So everybody take care. We'll be in touch with everyone.